The Eastern Conference play-in race continues to march towards its final conclusion, with teams both above the Bulls and below the Bulls being on losing streaks and one being on a winning streak. We're going to talk about those teams and how it could affect the Chicago Bulls as they try to push for a play-in spot. We're also going to talk about how the postseason play and playing in that postseason is going to be important for the Chicago Bulls and how it benefits the team going forward. Lastly, we're going to dive into the mailbag to listen to a voicemail. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. I'm the host here, Haize. You guys can follow me right off the top at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. And let's get right into it. So the Eastern Conference play-in race is a fun race to look at, but things are starting to fall in line where it can benefit the Bulls. Now, the Bulls still control their own destiny by having to win games. But when you look at the Washington Wizards, they continue to lose. They lost another game to Philly. They are currently on a 3-game losing streak. Now, the Indiana Pacers that are right below the Bulls, the reason why that matchup is important is that the Pacers actually do own the tiebreaker over the Bulls. They are currently on a 2-game winning streak, and they still sit a half game behind the Chicago Bulls. The Toronto Raptors that are also above the Bulls, they are also on a 3-game losing streak. And so right now, the Chicago Bulls are in a place where they control their own destiny. And so the Bulls have to continue to win games. Yes, you do need some help from other teams. We know that the Bulls right now are only 4 games behind that 7th spot. They could go in needing it. And the reason why that is important is that they could go into that play-in tournament only needing to win 1 game to secure a playoff berth. And, but with the way that things have gone with the Chicago Bulls, there's not, as right now, I think as much hope in the team that they're going to be able to push and play and win enough games to get into that 7th seed. But it all comes down to them and owning their schedule. And so right now, strength of schedule is important for the Chicago Bulls. And the Bulls have a tough schedule ahead of them. They have the 9th hardest schedule remaining in all of the NBA, and especially compared to their peers. And so it's going to be important that the Bulls play with the level of defense, heart, and consistency that we have seen from this team. When you look at the Raptors that are above the team right now, they have the 5th hardest schedule in the NBA. So again, they have a hard schedule as well. The Pacers also have the 8th hardest schedule. So both those teams right now have harder schedules than the Chicago Bulls. So it's still important that the Bulls take care of business. The Bulls, the Raptors, and the Pacers all have 14 or 15 games left on the season. So though that separation between them becomes that much more important as we go forward and more games get played. The Washington Wizards, on the other hand, the team that's right now on a losing streak, they have the 9th easiest schedule remaining in the NBA. And so them going on this losing streak right now could start changing drastically once they start hitting that easier part of their schedule. But right now, the Bulls, like I've said, they control their own destiny. And so the Bulls right now, they're 4 games back of the 7th seed. And I talked about why that was important for the Bulls if they can get that 7th seed, only needing to play 1 game in that play-in tournament to secure a postseason play. But even then, not everything is certain for the Bulls. I will say this. One of the things and aspects of this Bulls season and schedule and why it's important that the Bulls play out the schedule and have a nice record over this amount of time is that if the Bulls are rocking and rolling, if they're playing like they have been, if they hit their chemistry, and I titled it yesterday, if they can continue to peak at the right time, they can go in the play-in tournament with one of the biggest momentum shifts that they've had all season. The biggest question is, can they? A tough schedule ahead of the Chicago Bulls. We start off Wednesday against Sacramento Kings, a team that's right now 2nd in the Western Conference and is not a team that you can easily overlook. We then go to Minnesota, another scrappy team that has potential matchup concerns with the Chicago Bulls. You don't want to overlook them either. The Miami Heat, we've won both matchups against the Miami Heat so far this season, but you can't take that for granted. But that's going to be another game that's important for the Chicago Bulls if they want to leapfrog into that 7th seed. And then next week, it just gets tough. 2 games against Philly on Monday and Wednesday next week, a game against Portland, and a game against the Los Angeles Lakers. The next 7 games for the Chicago Bulls may very well be the telling part of where they're going to finish the season. Now, again, that's not completely in their hands because you have to look at what the other teams around us are doing and what their win and losing streaks are. But for the Chicago Bulls to truly hold on to their own destiny, they're going to have to lock in, play, and keep a level of heart that it's going to be tiring. They're going to have to expend a lot of heart and energy to stay in that area. And, I have my doubts about the Chicago Bulls, as I'm sure a lot of Bulls fans do. It's just because every time it seems like this team is going to go on a momentum string, it quickly gets pulled out from underneath us. But, so we'll see if that happens again with this team. One of the benefits that this team has been doing is just having Zach LaVine being back to being an elite offensive player. And it really does seem like all the other players, DeMar DeRozan as well, Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Beverley, everybody else is more so starting to round out into those roles and understand what they need to do better. It's amazing what a point guard has done to this team to kind of solidify and bring together what this team needs to do and how they need to execute for us to have success. And so, I have my doubts. I still have my doubts on the Bulls' ability to hold on to this play-in spot, but it's all going to be told on the court and it's up to them to do it. But the biggest question and thing a lot of people are asking is, all right, what's the point? How does it benefit the Chicago Bulls to go into a play-in tournament or even, God forbid, they make the playoffs just to get a first-round exit? And me and Pat, the designer, had an interesting conversation on this over on Locked On Bulls that it really kind of brought it all home for me. The biggest benefit, I think, right now, on top of some other things we're going to talk about, but the absolute biggest benefit for the Chicago Bulls in making postseason play is with the way that Zach LaVine is playing right now. Keep in mind, Zach LaVine was not healthy going into the last playoff series, and it showed and it was evident. But with the way that Zach LaVine is playing right now, for him to ride that out into postseason play, a play-in tournament, a playoff series, even if the Bulls do lose that initial playoff series, which I don't think anybody's going to necessarily predict with how the Bulls have been playing to win a playoff series. But if it all comes together, Zach LaVine would have to be playing the best basketball maybe of his career and maybe really learn what it's like to put the team on his back, right? To be the player that in the big games, in those big moments, has to perform. We've talked about it so many times this season right here on this show that in games against teams, we saw the Devin Booker game, the Donovan Mitchell game, players that just are like, we are not losing today. They put that team on their back and they go in and they score and they do amazing things to get their team the victory. Zach LaVine going on a playoff run with right now everything being built around him offensively and everybody kind of playing off him dictating that game offensively for the Chicago Bulls could very well teach and show Zach LaVine what is needed for him to have that success that he so desperately is after. Zach LaVine started off last season coming off an Olympic gold medal run, and we saw him. He started off that season being a highly efficient player. This has been the biggest stretch that we've seen that back from Zach LaVine since about 25 games into last season. And right now, the Bulls are peaking at the right time. Right now, the Bulls are playing the best defense they were heading into this play-in tournament. It was the reverse last season. The Bulls looked their best defensively at the start of the season, and everything tapered off as that season went on. So not only for Zach LaVine to go into a playoff series, understanding in a play-in tournament, I should say, because we got to get through that first, going into a play-in tournament and starting to realize, all right, this is how I need to play. This is how I need to execute. This is how I need to be successful and efficient in games that matter big time for the Chicago Bulls. Many of the Bulls fans and detractors, the knock on Zach LaVine is, does he show up in the games that truly matter? Does he show up against the bigger name teams? Is he going to show up in the playoffs? We all know Zach LaVine is not a generational type talent. He's not the talent that's going to go out and single-handedly, at least he has not shown that yet in his career, and get you and make you a playoff team just by him being there. And he may never get there. There's only a handful of players in the NBA that truly get there. But him realizing how I need to execute and the bigger weight on him in a playoff series to perform, I do think it helps Zach LaVine grow. But on top of that, on everything else, it also gives AK and Eversley a chance to look at what players and their playoff pedigree can they develop and continue to invest in, right? So, yeah, are the Bulls expected, even if they do make a play-in or win the play-in tournament, are they expected to win a first-round series? No, I don't think that we can say that right now, and I don't think we'd be able to say that no matter how good the Bulls are playing up until that time, until they show us. But I will say that it does allow the front office that has to make some big changes to this roster to understand, like, okay, these are the players that stepped up their game, and these are the players that showed a little bit of shine that we may be able to bet on if we build and improve this roster in a way that we need to, that these players are going to be the ones that step up big time for us in playoff type situations organizations that have grown and learned from that playoff type atmosphere. It's all on them. And so in the season of evaluation, in the season for, all of this and what has happened this season, we need to continue to do and look at the team for a standpoint of not everyone is going to come back to this roster. Not everyone, AK and Eversley are not. At least I don't think they can. Now, if they do, I'd be more shocked. But like, you can't run continuity back. You can't sell us now again to have another season of hope that this roster is going to be able to pull some things out. We need more talent on this roster. But to do that, I do think that it allows you a unique area to look at how these teams stack up against the better teams, especially on the last stretch of the season. And then especially if you do make that play-in tournament and to see what players perform and step up in a major way in that play-in tournament. So, the Bulls are going to have to continue doing what they've done. Their defense is really starting to round out. I like the brand of defense that the Chicago Bulls are playing. I like how they've been rotating out to the corner three, trying to eliminate that. It also seems like they've done a better job here lately at identifying what three-point shooters they can allow to try to get open to them and rotate out more slowly on and things like that. But we need to continue to see a level of urgency from the Chicago Bulls in this last stretch. This is it. This is truly the final stretch. The last 15 games for the Chicago Bulls, everything's riding on this. And the next 7 games that we have over the next 2 weeks, those are some of the most important games of the season for the Chicago Bulls as well. This has been a tough season. It's been a rough mental one, and it's been a lot of doubt rightfully placed on the roster that AK and Eversley have built. A lot of doubt on Billy Donovan as a head coach. A lot of doubt on AK and Eversley overall as the leadership of this team. And none of that is going to necessarily change by the way that the Bulls play over the last stretch of this season. But I can tell you what, it's going to be telling for how this team plays and then what AK and Eversley do with this roster in this offseason. So, I hate being in this place with the Chicago Bulls where, like, even last year right into the playoffs, I still was confident about my team. This season has been rough, and the confidence in this team has definitely dwindled some. I think you see it around Bulls Nation, but it seems like the players, at least, their confidence is starting to get in a place where it's never been as high. And that I do, as a fan of this team, I do commend. But it has to come via wins. You cannot have another letdown. And I, for one, refuse to allow myself and my emotions and things to get tied up again until this team shows me some serious things. And this stretch against all playoff and play-in teams is going to be hugely telling for the Chicago Bulls team if this is truly going to be the energy, the grit, and determination that they play with to fight against the better teams in the NBA. It all starts on Wednesday against Sacramento. And then after that, the next 7 games after that are all must-watch, must-win games for the Chicago Bulls, and they're not going to win all of them. At least I not hope. If the Bulls come out of this next 7 games 7-0, the confidence level should be at an all-time high with this team. Realistically, are they going to do that? No, and that's cool, but you have to come out of this no less than 4-3. Ideally 5-2, but no less than 4-3 over these next 7 games. Do the Chicago Bulls need to be to fully restore that faith and to give themselves the best opportunity at a play in the play-in tournament. Now, before we go, we got a voicemail from Michael Korn. We're going to go ahead and play that voicemail now.
Hey, good morning, Haize. After an ugly win after Houston, Zach LaVine, the way he's playing and with a really good point guard, the Bulls could be dangerous here. Just like when Lonzo played, not comparing Lonzo and hope he walks again without pain, but Lonzo and Patrick Beverley, like a good point guard who knows how to orchestrate the team. Last year, no one could figure the Bulls out until Lonzo went down, and I think it was with Popovich down in San Antonio. They kind of exposed the Bulls, like, hey, you're not a top 10 team anymore. And anyway, up until now, if Pat Beverley continues to play like this, other teams coming down the stretch here aren't going to be able to figure out how to defend the Bulls. Zach LaVine, I love his game, and I think like if he continues playing like this, he has to challenge people's notions that he's not someone you build a franchise around. You can't, that's an elite scorer. Of course, you can build a franchise around him. It's starting with a really damn good point guard, yeah? Real test comes in the schedule against the 76ers. I love Embiid, if he destroys the Bulls, it's all mental. Let's see if the Bulls could really not just play like they have been, but even stepping it up another notch. And a lot of that's mental. Beat the 76ers, man. Anyway, thank you. We'll talk to you later. Go Bulls.
All right. Michael Korn, the Bulls could be dangerous to end the season. The way that the Bulls have been playing, the defense specifically, right? And it's a difference. Like the Bulls have had a solid defense, technically a top 10 defense since December, I think. But the brand of defense that we're playing now, it just feels different, right? Because you're seeing the Bulls match runs. You're seeing the Bulls not get down on themselves. You're seeing the Bulls actually trust their defense to get them back in games, on games where other teams and players are starting to go off. And it is definitely a difference in that. And then you have Zach LaVine playing his best basketball in probably a year and a half consistently. And when Zach LaVine is scoring at the rate of efficiency that he is, it makes the game easier for all the other players. And then if you have Vooch also being that second fiddle that he can be, that the double-double player that just can get a big basket, Patrick Beverley bringing the energy, dictating games in the ways that he dictates them, with just getting to the loose balls, doing those type of things. This Bulls team has a different energy about it. I've also liked Patrick Williams coming off the bench and the energy that he's had, albeit a couple of games that aggressiveness hasn't been there, but for the most part, it has. And I like the way that it seems like Patrick Williams is finding himself being on that bench unit. The defense that Alex Caruso and Pat Bev bring into that offensive lineup with their communication and things, it has helped things drastically for this team. This team absolutely could be a dangerous team on the back half of the season. Me personally, I just have to see it. Now, as far as beating the 76ers, we have not beat the 76ers when Joel Embiid is healthy and playing on that team. Does that change? The 2 games against the Philadelphia 76ers specifically could be huge for the Bulls, because if the Bulls lose both those games while the teams that are below or above the Bulls win, it eliminates the separation that the Bulls have started building in that they could build. And I do think that winning at least one of these games against the 76ers is important. And we'll see if they can do it. I hope that the Bulls can do it. I really, truly do hope that the Bulls perform in a way on the back half of the season that just it helps things. And then you talk about the ugly win in Houston and the play of Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley is the MVP of this team. He's a living team mascot because of the way that he elevates and motivates this team. He does great things. And so the Bulls have a huge challenge in front of them. To Michael Korn's point, right? You have to figure things out. You're not a top 10 team. You're not any of that. And you have to figure out a level of determination to come in and play and execute in the way that we know that you can and trust that you can. The time is now. To what Jamal said a couple of episodes ago, there is no tomorrow for the Chicago Bulls. It just isn't. You have to play like every game is an elimination game. And we'll see if the Bulls if they do that, and if they have that level of energy that's needed to finish out the season, right? So, as far as LaVine and if he's somebody that you can build a franchise around, those questions, that's going to be a forever question, right? Because Zach LaVine, just when it comes down to it, regardless of how good he can be, he's not a generational type talent that just comes in and completely transforms. You have to build your team in a way that still it does overcome some of Zach LaVine's limitations, but also in a way that puts him in the best situations so he can be the elite scorer that he has the potential to be. So we'll see. It's a big mental test for the Chicago Bulls team, as Michael Korn said, here to finish the season. And let's see if they're up to the test. But that is it for today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central. You can follow the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.